Ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of the 354th Fighter Wing, we would like to welcome you to the 2020 September 11th Remembrance Ceremony. I'm Senior Airman Carly Joe Plunkett from the 354th Security Forces Squadron. This is a reminder that as the national anthem and taps are played, military members will stand at attention and our civilian guests will stand and place their hand over their hearts. At this time, please stand for the presentation of the colors, followed by the invocation by Chaplain Eno.
A word! Hooch! Colors! Halt! Present arms! Port! Arms! Colors! Colors turn! Hooch!
"911." For years, those numbers simply meant a call for help. Now they also remind us of September 11, 2001, the date of the worst terrorist attack in the United States of America. As we mark this day, I ask that you join me in prayer. God of comfort and hope, we lift to you our prayers this day on the 19th anniversary of September 11. We ask you to surround us with your protection and divine providence. September 11 was a day when, as a nation, we lost so many. May we take this time to honor these brave men and women who perished in the face of evil. When we struggle with the questions behind these events, help us to know that we are never alone. Give us the courage to ask for help when we are in need and to lend a hand of support to others. May we work tirelessly for a world where true peace and love reign among nations and in the hearts of all. In your name we pray.
Thank you, Chaplain Eno. Now some words from the 354th Civil Engineering Commander and First Sergeant.
Where was I on September 11th? I remember that day pretty clearly. I was actually in college at the time. I was talking with a friend on MSN Messenger back when that was a thing. And he had made a comment how there was an explosion at the World Trade Center. My first thought was, again, because at that time, a lot of you may not remember, but it had only happened about 5 years previously when a truck bomb exploded in the basement. So I went and I turned on the television. It was at that time that they actually showed the second plane coming in and hitting the second World Trade Center. And I remember that time realizing that we were under attack. That's not the kind of thing that just randomly happens. So I was in ROTC at the time. I went down to our ROTC detachment and spent the entire day watching the news. And thinking at the time that asking me where I was on that day is like asking my grandparents where they were on December 7th, 1941. It's my generation's Pearl Harbor. I remember watching news all day that day, and nobody knew how many planes were going to be coming down. Everybody started freaking out. The one went down in Pennsylvania, the one that hit the Pentagon, and at that time we had no clue how many planes were going to come down, how many planes were going to hit buildings, how many people were going to be killed. The thoughts that the White House was under attack, that Congress was under attack, planes that were unaccounted for, small planes, large planes. I remember nobody really knew exactly the extent of the attack that we were under. Spent the entire day watching that and wondering what the next ones were going to be that came down. I remember the next morning actually going to classes and didn't have any homework done, and the teachers in college giving me zeros for my homework and wondering in the back of my head, how can you actually expect anyone to do homework on a day that we're attacked by an enemy force? I remember at the time thinking it's important for me to drop out of college so that I can go serve my military and get involved in the war before it ends. Keeping in mind at that time our concept was every generation has a war, right? And the previous war was the original Gulf War, lasted like 3 days and we were done. Little did I know that even waiting another 3 years to commission, I would spend the remainder of my career fighting that war. Here I am, 20 years after that incident, 16 years into my career, and I've been deployed 5 times on the ground in Iraq and Afghanistan and a dozen other countries around the world fighting the same enemies, the same global war on terror that we've been fighting for 20 years. So it's interesting to think that while it may be my generation's Pearl Harbor, it's probably even the Pearl Harbor for the next generation as well if we continue to fight the global war on terror. So the other interesting thing is how firmly that's rooted in my memory. I was talking with one of my lieutenants the other day and asked her where she was on September 11th, and she was in kindergarten. I compare that to that's where I was when the Challenger blew up. And I don't think a lot of lieutenants know what the Challenger is. So it definitely gives you a different perspective of how we have young men and women serving in our armed forces now that have no real defining memory of September 11th. And in my life, it really set the stage for pretty much my entire career. So that's where I was on September 11th, and I remember it very clearly. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Senior Master Sergeant Christopher Campbell, and I'm the 354th Civil Engineer Squadron First Sergeant. On September 11th, 2001, I was 13 years old and getting up and getting ready for school in California to start my day in the 8th grade. My mother woke me up when the first plane hit, and I was able to witness on the news when the second plane hit. There's so much uncertainty. We still went to school that day and were getting updates from our teachers on the events that were occurring throughout our nation. We saw jets fly overhead. We were scared. We didn't know what to do. I know that the nation was mourning and continued to mourn. We mourned. After that, there was a call to arms. We had to take action. I was inspired from those events to later be a first responder and to join the military. It inspired me to join at 18 years old as security forces. I wanted to defend this country. I wanted to serve this country, and I did so. I volunteered for the first deployment I could. I pursued a degree in Homeland Security. Everything that occurred during that event inspired the rest of my life as a young man and as I go into adulthood. To this day, I remember the events that occurred on September 11th and how it influenced and impacted every decision I made from that day forward.
This morning, we pay special tribute to those who lost their lives on September 11, 2001. Thank you for being here today to honor their legacy. The following is an excerpt from Stephen Lee Myers, New York Times writer from Staten Island, New York. I know that for all of us here today, and in fact for all Americans, September 11, 2001 forever changed our world. Just as December 7, 1941, Pearl Harbor Day defined a generation, September 11th has indelibly shaped who we are, how we live our daily lives, and what we believe in. But unlike Pearl Harbor, in which one nation attacked a military installation, this time an organization of terrorists not operating under the flag of any one nation, attacked thousands of unsuspecting, innocent men and women. All these individuals we remember here today committed no offense against another nation. They held no ill will toward others. They did not subscribe to dogmatic principles centered on the destruction of those different from them. They were merely going about their daily routine, working hard to provide for their families and to build the life they dreamed of. I believe what shocked us the most that morning was not the unthinkable diabolical method used to attack us or the scope and magnitude of the attacks, but that it was our way of life that was attacked. Our way of life that embraces freedom and democracy, your way of life that allows us to worship freely and to look differently. The United States of America remains one of the most desirable places on the planet to live. Not for our oceans and plains, not for our mountains and rivers, not for our cars, homes, and technology, but for our freedom. The attacks on that morning of September 11th provided us with an ugly, painful reminder of the hatred and evil, the rage and resentment which resides in the hearts of some. In the days after September 11th, we were left to console the inconsolable. In the weeks after September 11th, we tried to explain the unexplainable. In the months after September 11th, we tried to make sense out of the senseless. And even today, 19 years after September 11th, we strive to find hope in the moments of hopelessness that still haunt us. At 0846, the first plane hit the North Tower. As we mark exactly 19 years from that moment, please join us in a moment of silence to mark when American Airlines Flight 11 hit the North Tower. None of us can prescribe to you how long or how deep your grieving process will take. None of us can prescribe to you how to heal your hearts. Nobody can promise you there will ever be a time when you do not feel the emptiness. No words, no ceremony, no plaques or stones, no amount of tears will ever replace your loss, and this ceremony surely cannot replace your loss. Let this ceremony provide all of us here at Eielson Air Force Base with a daily reminder to take nothing for granted, appreciate our freedoms, count our blessings, and strive to help our fellow wingmen and cherish our friends and family. Let this ceremony serve as a reminder of the American spirit which burns in all of us, that way of life which makes us the greatest nation on earth. Our American spirit is defined by our innate ability to reach out and help others, even in times of unthinkable crisis and unfathomable odds.
I'm A1C Curtis Campos from the 354th Civil Engineering Squadron, and I will be the narrator for the remainder of the ceremony. Just think about the courage of the 412 law enforcement officers, medics, and firefighters who rushed into 2 burning towers to bring thousands to safety. Or the courage of United Flight 93 passengers who resolved to save the lives of perhaps hundreds of others on the ground by storming the cabin of their plane. Just think about the countless hours devoted to recovery operations at the World Trade Center and Pentagon site. Or the way our nation resolved to carry on, even with a heavy heart, by returning to work and remembering and remaining true to our principles of freedom and democracy. Our American spirit is defined by our ability to rebuild stronger and more united in purpose. And our brief history as a nation on this earth is testimony to that. From flood and famine, from economic depression and civil unrest, from wars home and abroad, and from these unthinkable man-made acts of terror. We Americans are steeled by our legacy and determination and resolve. Though this small ceremony pales in comparison to the 2,996 innocent lives lost on September 11th. In the wake of these attacks, Al-Qaeda claimed responsibility. In response, our military forces took action through several military campaigns in Afghanistan, resulting in 1,856 deaths during hostile action. The memories are not set in stone, but set in our hearts and in our souls as we continue to move forward in the pursuit of happiness and defense of liberty for all. Thank you, and God bless America. And now, please welcome our keynote speaker from the 354th Munitions Flight, Technical Sergeant Bullock.
Thank you, A1C Campos. Undoubtedly, most people who are alive on September 11th, 2001 remember where they were and what they were doing on that day. It's a memory that's going to be embedded in our minds for the rest of our lives. Everybody has a story to tell, and this is my story. I joined the Air Force early 2001. I signed up. I was assigned to basic training August 21st, 2001. A lot of my friends back in school, they told me, hey, don't join the military. We're going to go to war. Something's going to happen. I sort of brushed it off because things have been fairly peaceful, kind of dismissed it, and said even if something does happen, it'll probably be a while before it does. Little did I know how right they were and how wrong I was. My third week into basic training is when September 11th happened. I remember it vividly. We had already had breakfast and we had already done PT, and the entire squadron was out on the marching pad practicing formations, practicing all of our facing movements, and helping some of the more advanced flights prepare for their graduation ceremony. So the entire squadron's out there, all the TIs are out there, they're watching us, and suddenly we overhear the loudspeakers. All the TIs are called to the orderly room immediately. So one TI was left out there to watch all of us. Hundreds of trainees being watched by a single TI. We thought that was kind of odd, but it's basic training. A lot of things are odd in basic training, things that you're not used to. So we're sitting there at ease, waiting for the instructors to come back. About 15, 20 minutes later, they come running out. They dismiss us immediately, told us to go to our day rooms. While we're walking back to the squadron, we see fighter jets circling the base, which we thought was really odd that we had fighter jets circling the base. We'd never seen that before. So we go back to our day rooms. TIs come in and they explain to us one of the towers has been struck by a plane. We think it's a terrorist attack. Stand by. At this point, we don't believe it's real. We think it's part of basic training. We think that they're trying to tear us down to break us back up, like that's what we do. Trying to see how we would react to a real world situation. Not long after that, the TIs come running back in and they said, the second tower has been struck. It's a terrorist attack. We're going to war. And even then, we still didn't believe it. We didn't know it was actually happening. They didn't turn on the TV. We didn't watch the news. This was before the days of smartphones, before the days of Facebook, before the days that everybody had a laptop and they were able to look this sort of stuff up. So security ramped up at the base, and we went into a pretty severe lockdown. It wasn't until the next day that we knew it was real. The TI called us one by one into his office and showed us pictures of the devastation from September 11th. And that just hit us. At that point, they started allowing individuals who had immediate family start calling home, who were either worked at the Pentagon or worked in the World Trade Center or worked nearby. If you were immediate family, you could call home. I have an uncle who was a captain in the Navy at the time, and he was working at the Pentagon. Because he wasn't immediate family, I wasn't allowed to make a phone call. It wasn't until about 2 weeks later that I got a letter from my father explaining that my uncle was okay, that he wasn't actually in the building when the attack happened. It was really strange to see everybody's reaction in basic training, because most people were just sort of dumbfounded. They didn't believe that it was possible that this could happen to us, where the United States, we were untouchable as far as anybody was concerned. I didn't actually see footage of the attacks until January 2002, when I got here to Eielson Air Force Base as my first assignment. I was an A1C, living in the dorms. I was in the day room watching Discovery Channel and a show called The Anatomy of the Attack. I remember watching this show and just having so much anger and frustration and sadness build up inside me, because this was the first time I had actually seen the scale of the devastation. But I also felt a lot of pride when I saw how Americans rallied together to help each other and to fight those who attacked us. I think it was at that moment that I realized the Air Force was going to be a career for me. And here I am, 19 years later, back at the same base where I started. Thank you.
Thank you, Sergeant Bullock. As a tribute to the 343 fallen firefighters, the Eielson Fire Department would like to do a long-held tradition of ringing out a last call, also known as the striking of the 4 5s. Long before modern technology, the fire service has held a time-honored tradition for rendering final honors by utilizing a system of bells. Each alarm would have its own series of bell strikes. When a firefighter died in the line of duty, headquarters would transmit 5 bell strikes, repeated in a series of 4 with a pause in between. This custom has been a long-standing tradition dating as far back as 1865 and continues to the present day. This form of rendering final honors to departed comrades is known in the fire service as striking the 4 5s. We give honor and respect for our fallen brethren. Ring the bells.